Hello, my name is Miss Cox and I'm pleased to introduce you today to A-Level History at St George's and our taster session for 2020. So making the decisions about what to choose for your A-Levels is really difficult, and quite often we have a lot of students that say, I love history, I've really enjoyed it at GCSE, but I've got to think about a career. And it's easy to see how learning something like IT or computing might seem like something that's going to be more helpful when looking for a job. And with a subject like history, it's harder to identify a clear career path. Sometimes you might be encouraged to drop history. Let's not do history, let's do something that is more practical. But actually, history is very practical. It involves lots of skills that are transferable. For example, learning about people, how they interact, their motives and their emotions. This is all really useful, especially when moving forward and working as part of a team. Learning about countries, societies, different cultures is going to be something that you will need to do within many different careers. Understanding how to negotiate with or trade with or report on a country if you know nothing about it is much more difficult. Learning to sort of locate and sift facts and understanding what evidence is useful and is not useful is something that we do quite a lot of in history. And presenting what you've learned. Now that might be in the way of a graph or otherwise. In history we tend to present our findings in essay form. But again, this is something that is a very practical skill for the future. Why do we study history? Some might argue it is the window into the past, but there's far more to it than that. You might be inspired by the acts of bravery and genius of our ancestors. You can learn how people lived with and overcame hatred, fear, discrimination. And understanding the past is the key to being able to understand the present. It helps to keep us informed on the current events as they unfold. It helps us appreciate multiple perspectives, different interpretations, not just in England, but globally. Analysing history strengthens our critical thinking skills, and this is something that is transferable whatever career you go into. History trains us to gather evidence, to find patterns and trends, a skill that is used both by the police, doctors, forensics, and many more. You can apply information from the past to help analyse and solve problems in the present. Helps to give us an understanding of other people, other cultures. History challenges us to think outside the box and to be creative. It can give us excitement, discovery, reward, and it may even lead us to solving real-world problems. So at A-Level History at St George's, we studied the EdXL course, Route B. In the first year, Year 12, you take two parts of the course, Paper 1 and Paper 2. Paper 1, England, Authority, Nation and Religion. Paper 2, Luther and the German Reformation. In the second year, Year 13, you take Paper 3, which is Germany, and undertake a personal study of coursework, a personal research study which requires you to work independently. So in a second, I'm going to pass you over to Mrs. Vinall, who will help to explain the Tudor course, Paper 1B, England, Authority, Nation and Religion. This option you learn about the key features of Tudor England from Henry VIII, Edward the Boy King, Bloody Mary, right the way through to the death of Elizabeth I, key individuals that you may already be familiar with. But the focus of this study is on developments and changes from the time period 1509 to 1588.
Well, if you're looking at this, you're probably considering history as an A-level option, and you're looking at the courses and thinking, I don't know if I fancy that. And with Tudors, you may think, well, I've already done Tudors. I did them in primary school, did them in Year 7. I think I know everything I need to know about Tudors. There's not going to be anything else that's going to be very interesting to me. Well, I'm going to try and convince you otherwise. Okay, so 5 things I found fascinating about the Tudors and linked to our lives today. So some similarities with the Tudor period and modern life. Well, it was the very first Brexit, the break with Rome. I'll look at that in a bit more detail. It was the start of celebrity culture in England used as nationalist propaganda. It was the start of truly international trade for England. It was the start of international espionage. MI6 began in the Tudor period. And there were frequent lockdowns due to a mysterious virus. Sounds a bit familiar. Well, Henry VIII, this is break from Rome, began the first Brexit. In the year 1500 odd years before Henry broke with Rome, you could travel throughout Europe, you could speak Latin, and everyone understood you, so you had one language. You could use the same coinage throughout the whole of Europe, so it was like having the euro everywhere, and everyone thought themselves as Europeans. And that was because they were united by the Roman Catholic Church. When Henry VIII broke with Rome, he did more than just get his own divorce, which was his aim. He actually severed England's connections culturally, religiously, psychologically with Europe, and he began that step, that big break. So Henry VIII started this first Brexit. And for people at the time, they couldn't imagine what the repercussions would be, but it felt like a big break. I'm sure for most people it was a significant event once they knew about it. Of course, news was different then. It wasn't that easy to get hold of current news. So the first thing that people would have known about this was probably during Edward's reign rather than Henry's, when the church interiors began to be changed. But that's the first Brexit. Because of the break with Rome, the Roman Catholic devotion to Mary, which we call the Marian cult, the Virgin Mary, was stopped. And quite audaciously, Elizabeth put herself in the position of the Virgin Mary. That's why you see her calling herself the Virgin Queen. Virginia in America was named after her. She had an allegorical poem called Gloriana written to her. She wore white increasingly, and so she identified as this Virgin Queen and replaced the religious cult with the Blessed Virgin Mary. And she used this as nationalist propaganda to unite the English against Europe, and particularly the threat from Spain, the Spanish Armada. International trade, because our trade links were disrupted because of the break with Rome, we had to search further afield, and for us it was the beginning of international trade, more shamefully the beginning of the slave trade for us, but opened up new markets for trading some of our goods, but also for bringing in new things like spices and more exotic goods to us. And because of the threat from Europe, and particularly from Spain, we began under Sir Francis Walsingham to have an international espionage outfit. He had spies sent all over Europe to listen, to hear what was happening, to anticipate threats from terrorists, and we did have terrorist attacks during the Tudor period, and so the beginning of MI6 began because of our break with Rome, and it began during Elizabeth's reign, and obviously is continuing in importance to this day. And another thing that you'll find very similar to our lives today is there were frequent lockdowns due to a mysterious disease. This disease was called the sweating sickness, and nobody's really quite sure what that disease was. Obviously, there were frequent bouts of plague as well. And whenever these diseases came to the fore, and often during hot weather, all of the public spaces were closed down. So theatres, inns, pubs, all those places, just like today, for social distancing purposes, were closed down. So another resonance with our modern life. Some other fascinating facts. Before the Tudor period, we only had one major export, which was wool. Because of our Protestant religion, we took in French Protestant refugees who kick-started our cloth manufacturing industry, which was one of the main stimuli for the Industrial Revolution 100 years later. And a sad fact to finish on. Queen Elizabeth I died after lying for 3 days on the floor, and that was because she was so royal, regal, that nobody could touch her without her permission, which she couldn't give because she had had a paralysing stroke. So that was the end of the Tudor period, and after that it became the Kingdom of the Stuarts. But I think it's fascinating. I'm sure you will find it fascinating too. So what else do you need to know? It's taught by me, Mrs. Vinyl. You'll need to purchase a textbook, and the whole course is tested in just 3 20-mark essays, but you'll be given writing frames, lots of help and practice with these throughout the course. So I hope you choose us.
Running alongside Mrs. Vinyl's paper about the Tudor and the Reformation will be paper 2, Luther and the German Reformation, with myself. In this study, you'll understand what Europe was like before 1515 and how the Catholic Church became corrupted, perhaps giving some answers as to why there was a break from Rome. You'll learn about Martin Luther and how he protested against the Church and how his impact against Germany and Europe throughout the 16th century led to such big changes in the world that we know today. But who is Luther? Some of you may have read lots about Martin Luther King in the news, especially recently with the Black Lives Matter campaigning.
I have a dream.
Unfortunately, it isn't him. It's also not this Luther, Idris Elba. The Luther we will be studying is this man, a monk from Germany. I don't always nail things to church doors, but when I do, stuff starts to happen. Martin Luther is the key individual that we will be studying in paper 2. He's sometimes seen as the towering figure of the German Reformation. Mrs. Vinyl has already begun to discuss the impact of England's break from Rome. But what else do you know? What do you already know about the Reformation in Europe and beyond? Take a moment just to think, is there anything you know about the break from Rome that had an impact elsewhere? Now, the chances are you know very little about the Reformation in Europe, particularly in Germany, where we take our story of Luther. So there's an image here on the screen, and I just want you to spend some time looking at the image and thinking about reasons for the Reformation. What can we learn from this image? Pay close attention to the details. Is this an image that you would say is typical of the Catholic Church, of what you expected to see in the 1500s? Is there anything here that might suggest reasons as to why people would want to move away from the religion that had always dominated Europe and beyond for hundreds of years? So you might have been surprised to have seen how well dressed everyone is in this image. There's a lot of money going on, there's some trade in the background. A priest or a bishop is on horseback, and even the horse itself appears to be quite extravagant in what it is wearing. And the reality is that actually it wouldn't have been like this. Luther himself saw the people, and they were not extravagant, they were not wealthy, they were poor. As a young monk, Luther visited Rome, and he was dismayed by the church's extravagance. The Catholic Church was corrupt. They had a monopoly on the Bible. It was in Latin and only a few people could read it. So the general public had to rely on the Catholic Church and what they said in order to get to heaven. There was very little interest in the poor themselves. There was the worship of relics instead of just worshipping God. And there was the selling of indulgences, a phrase that if you've been at St George's and you've studied Henry VIII with us at GCSE, you may be familiar of. Henry VIII was also against the selling of indulgences at the point of his reign. So how did one monk cause the Reformation? Did he change the religion of Europe by himself? But what other factors led to this split from the Catholic Church, which had dominated Europe for hundreds of years? Our course aims to answer these questions and many more. We really hope that you'll join us in September as we go on a journey to discover more about the Reformation.